Hi, this is Mr. West, Ross's Most Stylish, and welcome to this video, Year 7, on how to improve your work on the mystery of the skeletons assessment. Let's get going. So first job, look at the bottom of your assessment. You'll see you've got one or two colours there. Now those colours relate to targets, and this is like a contents page of the video. It's the running order that we're going to go through them. So obviously have a look on here now, and then you can screenshot this if you wanted to. And then have a look and see where your targets are. So for example, if you had red and black, you know you got one, the first one, then one quite away into the video. So have a quick look at that. You can always return back to that, okay, to see where your next target is in the video. Okay, so the red target is I need to use more clues / sources in my answer. So what you need to do is you need to copy down this bit here in green pen. That's your target. So write that down underneath your assessment and also in the front of your book on your assessment page. This down here, the bottom bit, okay, tells you here what you need to do. So at the end of your answer, write down 3 or 4 clues that you didn't use and explain what they tell you about the skeletons. And the simple approach to this could be that you look at the clues in the book and you just go through and see, have I used them? Have I used clue A? Have I used clue B? Right there, just every clue. Have you used it? And then when you found 3 or 4 that you haven't used, write about those at the end. And literally, obviously, you wouldn't tick on the page, but you're like, oh, I used clue G. I didn't use clue E. I did use clue C. So, you know, for example, like these 3, you're thinking, right, I want to put clue E in, for example. Okay, so go through the book and work your way through. Start at clue A and work your way through and write down 3 or 4 clues, first of all, that you didn't use. When you've written the 3 or 4 clues down, then write down what they tell you about the skeletons and how they could have improved your answer. Okay, when you've done that, move on to the next one. Okay, so if you've got green target, then up here in green pen, there's your target. You need to write that down underneath your assessment and in your assessment sheet at the front of your book, so you know what your target is. Okay, now this is the green target. Okay, and at the end of each, I must make sure you explain how certain I am. That's your target. So underneath here is what you need to do about it, okay? So at the end of each section, explain how certain you are about your work. And you must say why you are certain, and you must include both sides. So unless you're completely certain, you need to say why you are pretty certain, but also why you're not certain, okay? So for example, if we take the issue of the Romans, okay? So you've said that you think the Romans killed the skeletons, the people of the hill fort. Okay, so how certain are you? Now, I would say that I am pretty certain, okay, about that. And why am I pretty certain? Well, first of all, I need to think about the number of clues. Okay, so there are quite a few of clues. There are quite a few clues that talk about the fact that it is the Romans. Here, for example, is clue K. Now then, this clue shows us that the Romans have taken over this part of the land by AD 43. So it's highly likely that the Romans did kill the people at Maiden Castle. Okay. Also, we've got the evidence of the ballista. Okay, and we've also got evidence of Suetonius, who led the Second Legion. There's a clue about him and how he destroyed 20 large settlements. So there are different clues that you can use. So I would say that I'm pretty certain. However, you could say that you're not completely certain, because however unlikely, Professor Noel could have been right. It could have been the Belgae, who are here, look there. It could have been them who attacked the Durotriges, killed them, and then almost straight away the Romans turned up and killed the Belgae. Now I think that's highly unlikely, but that's why I can't be completely certain. Okay, that could have happened, couldn't it? So as you go through, ideally for each one, but certainly for the Roman one, now I've taught you through it, and for one other, please, can you say how certain you are? Remember, you must say why you are this certain, and include both sides, why you're certain and why you're not completely certain. So some people will have got this target because they haven't said how certain they are. Other people will have got it and they'll say, oh, well, I have said how certain I am, but it's probably this last bit here. Okay, you must include both sides, why you are certain and why you are not. It's probably that bit that you haven't done, and that's what you need to do. So you see, I'm pretty certain because, however, I can't, and that's a good phrase to write, so I'll type it. Okay, however, I cannot be completely certain, because that would be quite a good sentence starter to put at the end of your green paragraph section, wouldn't it? Okay, however, I cannot be completely certain because. And if I see that bit there been written, then I know people have definitely got this target. Okay, so this is the blue target. Okay, I need to cover all the sections in my work. So you write that target down underneath your assessment and in your assessment sheet in the front of your book. Okay, now it's quite straightforward. For this assessment, there were 4 sections. Okay, who were the skeletons? How did they die? Who killed them? And how were they buried? So what you need to do is look at the 4 key questions in your table and look at ones you haven't completed, and you must complete those now. Okay, so it's pretty straightforward. Complete the ones you haven't done. Okay, so the orange target, here it is. Okay, this is what you need to write down at the end of your assessment in green pen and in the target sheet if you've got it at the front of your book. I need to say how helpful the clues have been. Now then, this is quite an interesting thing to think about, particularly if you've done pretty well with your assessment, but you want to make it even better. So some clues are really helpful, aren't they? Okay, some clues are not so helpful. Okay, now then, if we were to think back to the example of clue 1, the picture, you might say that's not totally helpful because at first glance it gives the impression that the skeletons are buried in a chaotic and quick way. Perhaps that's why Noel said they were buried so quickly, even though we know later on that he's wrong. So a clue like clue 1 might not be that helpful, even though when you look closely you can see what's happening. It does mislead you a little bit, okay? Clue G, for example, might be quite helpful because straight away I can see that the Romans are involved, okay? I don't even need to read the actual text down here. I can just look at this guy here and know that the Romans are involved. So you might say that that is a helpful clue. So what you need to do is look through your answer, pick out 3 or 4 clues, and try not to pick out the ones that have been the most helpful. Maybe pick some that have been helpful and some that haven't been as helpful, okay? Which clues have you relied on? That's a good thing to think about, isn't it, for this? Which clues have you relied upon? Have you relied on? Oops. Which clues have you relied on? And you might want to use a couple of the ones that you've really relied on to get your answer right. Then you might want to use some that maybe you haven't relied on and said why they aren't as important. Okay, so try it for 3 or 4 clues at the end for orange. Okay, so purple target, here it is. You need to write this down at the green pen at the end of your assessment and in the front of your book if you've got purple in the little table sheet, okay? And it is, I need to explain why I think this happened, okay? Look through your answer and add some evidence and examples to back up your answer and explain why it happened, okay? So you might think to yourself, okay, so I've written down about why the skeletons were buried. It might be nice to think about maybe that the Geotrigs were quite a religious group of people, and maybe that's and they also believe that you could take things with you, and lots of gods, and believe they could take things with you, so that's why they buried them with these tankards of ale and different things like that. Okay, you might think, why the Romans take over Maiden Castle? Well, they did this perhaps because they knew they needed to take over the large settlements. Without doing that, they wouldn't have been able to conquer England. If they just left the settlements there, there's no way they would have been able to conquer England, okay? So have a look through your answer and add some evidence and examples to back up your answer and explain why it happened, all right? Okay, so yellow. Here's your yellow target here. Okay, you need to write this down at the bottom of your work and in your table at the front of your book, which is all your assessment information in. I need to see if I think any of the clues have been misleading. Now, I'm going to look at this clue here for you, clue E, as an example of that. You're going to pick 2 or 3 clues that might have misled you. Okay, remember, a misleading thing is something that makes you think something that's not true. Okay, now clue E is a picture of a skeleton, a back, isn't it? And it's got the ballista bolt in the middle there. Now, I think this clue is a bit misleading because when you instantly see it, you think, right, the Romans killed the skeletons and they killed them with the ballista. But actually there's another clue, isn't there, in there that tells you how many of the skeletons were damaged in which ways. And it says that most of the skeletons were killed by sword wounds to the head. But this doesn't suggest that, does it? This suggests that it was a ballista that killed them. I think it said actually only one of the skeletons had a wound made by a spear or ballista. So actually, even though this clue shows you what happened to, it's only showing you what happened to one of the skeletons. And there were 52, so it's 1 out of 52. Were affected in this way. But you might have thought, or you might have written that lots of the skeletons were killed by the ballista, but actually it's only 1 out of 52. So this clue, by being quite visual, is actually still quite misleading. See if you can think about any other clues. And what you might want to do for that is look back at Noel's answer and think, why do you think he got his answer wrong? Clearly because he was a bit arrogant. But are there any clues that misled him? And maybe you could put those into your answer. Okay, so this is the black target here. If you've got black, this is what you need to write in green pen at the bottom of your work and in your table at the front of your book. I need to explain how each clue helped me. And people who get black target probably listed a load of clues. So they said, oh, I think the Romans killed them because of clues E, K, G and H. Well, that's no good. Whenever you've written about a clue, you need to explain how it helped. Okay, so for example, you might say, I think it was the Romans because of clue K. Clue K, you can see here it is, clue K, is a map of England and shows how much of England the Romans controlled by AD 59. Okay, now we can see there that the Maiden Castle is inside the yellow bit or the orange bit. Okay, so that shows that Maiden Castle was taken over by the Romans, and this helps me to explain that the Romans were the people who attacked and killed the people at the hill fort and turned them into skeletons. That's it. So try for each one, look back and see where if you ever know where you've mentioned a clue and you've not explained how it helped, put a little star like that. And then put a little star at the end of your work. Okay, I know what that is really, but it's meant to be a star. And then link them up and basically say, this is why, this is how this clue helped me. Okay, so this is the amber target here. You need to write this down at the bottom of your work and in your table at the front of your book. Okay, I need to include more detailed explanations in my answer. So you've got this target if you've written quite a short paragraph. Okay, and what you might find is that you haven't fully explained your answer and you haven't said why you think it. So for example, with the Romans, you may have just said, oh, clue G, H and E all help me to see that the ballista was a weapon that was used to kill the skeletons. Okay, now you've used the clues and you've talked about the ballista, but it's very, very brief. So what I would like to see is you explain how each clue, so explain how each clue helped you. Helped you. That could be a good idea. Or it might be that you need to fully explain how certain you are. You might have said, oh, I'm pretty certain because there's a lot of clues. Well, that's quite a short explanation, isn't it? Why don't you develop that a little bit and say, well, because I've got 4 or 5 clues that tell me it's the Romans, that's the most clues I've got of any of these questions, and therefore that makes me the most certain of this particular question than any other. Okay, I'm fully explaining myself. So have a look at that and see what you are, okay? And just to finish, it's a little bit of a guide if you want to have a look at the life without levels, how much you've looked into that in your target grade. You can see where these colours fit into the target grade. So, for example, if you were as foundation and you've got a target of red or blue, you know that you're trying to move into developing. If you were developing, then you've got targets red and blue, you need to consolidate that level. So you've not achieved that level yet. Similarly, if you were developing and you've got, let's say, blue and green, you know that blue is the one that you need to make sure you get developing. Green is a target above what you've got. So you can have a look at that if you want for your own reference.